All right, so I'm here with Matthew Swift. We're at a Bitcoin conference, but you actually run one of the most interesting conferences in the world that's totally outside of this space. So, can you talk a little bit about Concordia and the conference you run, and then maybe how you ended up in a place like this?
Of course. So Concordia, we started with our flagship summit, which is now the largest private sector summit parallel to the UN General Assembly. And that wasn't driven necessarily by an affiliation with the UN, although we have that, but much more around what do you do when the majority of the world's heads of government are within about 30 blocks of one another?
Yeah.
And what does that especially mean for the private sector? So since our founding 15 years ago, we've really leaned into better understanding what's the market solution, what is the market-based solution to public policy issues. So whether we're talking about immigration or we're talking about AI or we're talking about Bitcoin, what's the market saying the answer is to those issues and challenges from a public policy standpoint?
And policy makes a big difference in some of these spaces that are highly regulated, have huge society impact. So what's your observation from, the Bitcoin conference where we're at today versus policymaking, say, 2 years ago?
Well, I think it's an incredible reflection of just truly, to your point, the impact that policymaking has on issues. Because right or wrong, this isn't a political statement, there seems to be a dramatic difference in the last administration's approach to Bitcoin versus this administration's approach to Bitcoin. And so you have here thousands of people that have gathered that are excited, optimistic. You feel like you kind of walked into this whole new world a little bit in this space. And so I think that all trickled down because of a shift in policy. So it kind of starts and ends on the policy side. And so then the question is, are policymakers truly educated in understanding these issues and what opportunity this presents itself?
Yeah, it's wild. I think we were talking offline. 10 years ago, there was 50 people in an event like this.
Yeah.
Now there's 30,000 people, 5,000 companies. The vice president just spoke. Capital markets are larger than ever, top 5 asset in the world. So, a lot of our audience is capital allocators, investors, CEOs, VCs. How should they think about interacting with policy and government leaders in a space like this that's clearly gone from, a very small niche industry to now a big part of the financial infrastructure?
So I think big picture is they need to lean in, and they need to lean in a genuine and serious way. Why do I say that? Policy is not meant to advance quickly. Legislation, we don't want it to necessarily advance quickly. If for any other reason, then we want those making these decisions to see the full board to the best that they can. So what's most important from whether it's the allocators, whomever it might be, right? Those in the private sector on the front lines of this should not be shy about their opinions and views on policy. And frankly, they shouldn't even really play politics. I think that's one of the keys is you got this environment where a lot of private sector is confusing policy over politics. My advice is that business leaders today lean much, much, much more into policy, because if they aren't talking about it, frankly, people who know far less than they do about what that smart policy is going to be are going to drive the policy and political discussions in a way that they're not going to be happy about.
So, you run one of the largest apolitical events, but Concordia is really beyond that. You have one single event, but you also have a wider. So where should business leaders follow? Where should capital allocators look when they're looking at, sort of your guys' wider organization on, engaging in these, really critical policy things? So you guys have multiple events per year.
We do. So we do our flagship summit in New York. We're the largest private sector summit at the same time as the UN General Assembly. But we've started doing these smaller summits all around the world. And they are highly curated and very topic driven, 1-2 themes at most that we will drive. And it's meant to accomplish 2 things: important content and discussion, matched with a real immersion into those local communities so that people can understand the opportunities. So for instance, you and I both have done a lot in Latin America. It is not easy to get a business leader from the United States to really, really genuinely look at Latin America as a key market.
Yeah.
Right? It should be easier than it is. So the question is, how do you break some of those barriers down? You've got to hook them into some sort of environment similar to the ones that Concordia designs. And so, we give this safe environment for business leaders to go into a space to better understand something. We do this series called our Amazonas Initiative, and we hold the summits actually in the rainforest.
Wow.
And of course, we have the people that do not need to be sold on why this is important. Yeah. That's great. We have the leaders of the different environmental groups. But we also have business executives from major companies, including companies that most would say are directly responsible for the damage that's being done to the Amazon rainforest. We've gotten criticized for that, but my argument is, isn't it better that executive who's never been in the rainforest can now go back and say, I now have been, and here's how I'm going to change my approach or my thinking on this. And it goes to emphasize the power of the private sector and the power that the market is telling on when it comes to so many solutions that exist to these different issues of hotels.
Yeah, and what you find, I think, is, you guys are a bridge. When you bring private sector down to these areas, whether it's in El Salvador and places that we're involved with, or in the Amazon, these have huge impacts back at home because they touch the energy market, or they touch, how do we deal with our natural resources, or they touch, how are we doing with commerce and supply chain. So, and I think one of the things you guys do a great job with is basically mixing private sector, public sector, policymakers. So where do people learn more about Concordia? How can they follow along? You guys have an incredibly rich program.
Absolutely. So our website, concordia.net, or at Concordia Summit on all the relevant social media platforms. We're a member-based organization. Everybody's treated the same, no matter where you are, whether you are the Coca-Colas of the world or the startup from Medellin, Colombia. Yeah. Everybody's on the same footing and the same playing field, which is important. And one of the things I'll end with, and I'm very proud of this, is the key to our deal is that we are never going to be an echo chamber. We are never going to be a room of believers talking about all the things that they believe in. And instead, it's going to be much more about advancing issues, educating on issues, building those connections that have to be fostered and built. If you look at the majority of the issues that we are running into, the challenges we're running into today, I would challenge anyone to pinpoint one where a public-private partnership is not an answer that should be pursued.
Yeah. One, the best place to start is with actual conversations with people on both sides of the aisle.
Exactly.
Awesome. Matthew, thank you for the work you guys are doing. Concordia is awesome. We love it. We support it. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.